Within the vast world of cinema, there is hardly a type of film more fascinating than that of the cult classics. Cult classic films, sometimes referred to simply as cult films, are movies that attract often small yet highly dedicated fan bases and cult followings. Though such films may sometimes lack sophisticated elements such as coherent plots, they make up for it with striking visuals, memorable dialogue, and a sense of unique originality that set them apart from the mainstream. One of the most obscure examples of this type of film is Incubus, which easily qualifies as one of the most bizarre films ever made. The plot centers around a succubus, or demon in female form, named Kaya, who constantly lures sinful and corrupt men to their demise in the sea using her unholy abilities. Growing increasingly tired of this routine, Kaya argues with her sister, an older succubus, that her powers would be much better spent seducing a man of high moral standing and character. To satisfy this urge, Kaya wanders the countryside in hopes of finding more challenging prey until she comes across Mark, a war veteran played by William Shatner, who seeks to heal his war wounds with an abundance of healing water nearby. After meeting Mark and his sister, Arndis, Kaya succeeds in drawing Mark's interest, yet fails in claiming his soul as, while they quickly fall for one another, Kaya's explicit suggestions and Mark's insistence that they wait until marriage before partaking in truly intimate acts complicate matters significantly for Kaya, as she even falls ill as a result of Mark's apparent holiness. Enraged by her flirtation with Mark's purity, Kaya's succubus sister, Amail, manages to convince her away from Mark, only for them to summon an Incubus, a male demon of seduction, as a means to kill Mark and both rape and murder Arndis in revenge for apparently tainting Kaya. After Arndis is done away with in a heinous manner, Mark does battle with the Incubus and prevails, yet is immediately taunted by Amail, who claims that Mark now has blood on his hands as he had just committed the sin of murder. Nearing death, Mark rushes toward an imposing cathedral where Kaya professes her love for him. Disturbed, the Incubus, who returns injured, rebuttals and says that she belongs to the Prince of Darkness. Yet, after making the sign of the cross in retaliation, the Incubus transforms into a goat, tackling Kaya in an unsettling highlight of the film. The film then concludes with both Mark and Kaya locked in an embrace as the demonic goat looks on. Though riddled with flaws and a bit imbalanced, the film is host to a number of strong points that only make it more intriguing. For one thing, the language in which the film is shot. It certainly isn't English or even one of the many widely spoken languages, but Esperanto. Created in 1887 by linguist Ludwig Zemanov, who, fascinated by the idea that wars and general large-scale disputes would be prevented if the people of the world spoke one universal language, had constructed the language of Esperanto by combining elements of different Indo-European languages including German, Italian, Polish, Russian, and English. While barely a fraction of the global population speaks Esperanto today, those that understand and speak the language have been especially vocal in their disapproval of how the language is spoken by the different cast members in Incubus, as the actors only learn their lines phonetically over the course of a week, albeit without an actual Esperanto speaker advising them on set. The intention on the part of the filmmakers to incorporate Esperanto into the film stemmed from the idea that since the language is spoken by people all over the world, a wider audience would be reached, except there has never been a precise part of the world in which Esperanto speakers are actually concentrated, unlike the majority of spoken languages today, a fact that ultimately jeopardized the Esperanto and film innovation from the very beginning. As a result, the film's popularity and success alike failed to manifest upon release, largely due to the very absence of English or another widely spoken language, as well as the general disapproval of those already accustomed to the language of Esperanto. All in all, an astounding failure in marketing. Another noteworthy quality of the film, however, is William Shatner. Though he would best be known for portraying Captain Kirk in the original series of Star Trek, which would catapult him into being a household name, Shatner's role in Incubus is logical, as even before the film's production, Shatner made numerous appearances in other horror and fantasy productions, and namely both the Twilight Zone episodes Nick of Time and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Two of some of the greatest episodes in the groundbreaking show's history that also happen to be some of his earliest roles as an actor. Apart from this, Shatner would appear in one episode of The Outer Limits, another groundbreaking horror and sci-fi series that saw Leslie Stevens, the director of Incubus, as its creator. After the cancellation of The Outer Limits well into its second season in 1965, Stevens sought to gather the cast and crew that he had assembled from the series for the film. Among them was cinematographer Conrad Hall, who would later win 3 Academy Awards for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, American Beauty, and Road to Perdition, and composer Dominique Frontiere, who was responsible for some of the most haunting music compositions in television history. With such a dynamic league of creatives, Incubus succeeds in having gorgeously constructed and carefully shot cinematography with sharp camera angles, as well as an incredibly eerie musical score that only enhances the haunting and otherworldly quality of the film. Additionally, the film's ghostly atmosphere provides considerable weight to the overall story and controversial subject matter as a whole. With all of this in mind, Incubus merely comes off as a cult classic with distinctive elements, a curiosity piece for those that adore classic horror films and abstract art house films in general, until one takes into consideration the disastrous release of the film and the many appalling tragedies experienced by the cast and crew that followed. The actor who portrayed the titular Incubus was Milos Milosevic, a Serbian actor who by 1966 was only beginning his career as both an actor and stunt double in Hollywood. Initially serving as a bodyguard for famed 60s French actor Alain Delon, Milosevic would find himself entangled in an affair with Barbara Ann Thomason, the promiscuous fifth wife of classic Hollywood icon Mickey Rooney, around the same time that the production of Incubus was well underway. Months after the production had wrapped, Milosevic would brutally murder Thomason with the use of Rooney's .38 caliber revolver, only to take his own life immediately afterward. Though the crime occurred in Mickey Rooney's home, Milosevic's own entry as well as his access to Rooney's firearm became possible as, at the same time, Rooney had been recovering from an infection at a hospital that had been sustained from another production, thus disproving allegations that Rooney himself was behind the murders. 2 years after Incubus saw its release, actress Eloise Hart, who portrayed the eldest succubus sister, would see her life shattered by immense tragedy. In December of 1968, Hart's daughter, Marina Habe, had returned to her mother's home in Hollywood during winter break from her schooling in Hawaii as an arts major. Shortly before New Year's Day, Habe had gone on a date with a longtime family friend, yet upon returning home later that night, had been abducted by another man that stood just outside her home. 2 days later, a couple walking along the incredibly scenic Mulholland Drive in Hollywood stumbled upon a purse, only for the purse's discovery to lead to the uncovering of Habe's body just off of Mulholland Drive. Though the LAPD has never verified or disclosed details pertaining to Habe's murder and the circumstances involved, reports persisted that Habe had been both brutally raped and stabbed multiple times, in the stomach, neck, abdomen, back, and head. The case remains unsolved. Another actress, Ann Atmar, who portrayed Mark's sister Arndis, committed suicide just a few weeks after the film had completed principal photography. The speculated bad luck associated with Incubus also impacted those behind the scenes. Leslie Stevens' production company would soon go bankrupt, and despite the enormous success of The Outer Limits, remained stagnant within a limited body of work. Further, though he went on to marry Allison Ames, the actress who played the role of Kaya in 1965, the marriage had only lasted less than a year before a divorce was initiated. Dominique Frontiere, the composer who would later become an Emmy winner, found himself entangled in a criminal scheme in the 1980s. Shortly before the 1980 Super Bowl between the Los Angeles Rams and the Pittsburgh Steelers, Frontiere, with the help of his wife, LA Rams owner Georgia Frontiere, contrived a scheme to scalp over 16,000 Super Bowl tickets, which saw the couple reach a profit upwards to $500,000. Such criminal activity, as well as his failure to report his acquiring of the money to the federal government, landed him behind bars for 9 months after getting convicted in 1986. The film itself had also suffered a monumentally disastrous release that took the form of a premiere at the San Francisco Film Festival in October of 1966. According to Incubus producer Anthony Taylor, the print of the film that had been selected for screening had been missing its soundtrack, prompting an intoxicated Taylor to scramble for another print of the film while the seated audience waited for nearly an hour. In addition, the moment the film began playing yet again, roughly 50 to 100 Esperanto-speaking audience members burst into laughter as soon as the actors uttered their lines in the language. Creepily, special guests of the Incubus premiere included the famed couple of film director Roman Polanski and actress Sharon Tate, less than 3 years before a pregnant Tate would be murdered by the Manson family. Since the marketing and premiere of Incubus were inevitably dead on arrival, the distribution of the film and general commercialism proved non-existent, leading to virtually every known print of the film being lost for over 30 years until a copy was uncovered in France in the 1990s, culminating in a large-scale restoration and later, a DVD and VHS released in 2001. Over the years, given the slew of horrific tragedies and general misfortune associated with the film, Incubus has gained the reputation of being a quote-unquote cursed film, which, whether one believes in this assessment or not, may not sound too far-fetched given the dark motifs of the film in the forms of devil worship, unholy seduction born from carnal sin, and other demonic elements. With this in mind, it becomes simple to link Incubus with other films that harbor alleged curses, with possibly the most famous example being Poltergeist, released in 1982 and directed by Tobe Hooper, who entered the world of horror cinema with his 1974 grindhouse masterpiece, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Poltergeist concerns a suburban Californian family unknowingly residing atop a Native American burial ground getting terrorized by otherworldly entities and ghosts, with the malevolent spirits practically kidnapping the little girl, which prompts the family to consult a parapsychologist as a means to both rescue her and search for answers to at least rid the home of the said spirits. In one scene, when the mother of the family slips into the backyard swimming pool, she is greeted by skeletons that emerge from the depths. In a twisted production decision, the skeletons were of real people rather than props, as Tobe Hooper felt that acquiring fake skeletons would have been too costly as far as the budget was concerned. This choice on his part led many to believe that the film had been cursed, as both the actress that portrayed the little girl, Heather O'Rourke, and the actress that played the eldest sister, Dominique Dunne, would meet tragic ends after the film's release. In O'Rourke's case, she perished as a result of an intestinal abnormality in 1988, and in the case of Dunne, was strangled and murdered by her ex-boyfriend John Sweeney immediately after the film's release. Whether affected by an actual curse or a simple product of a grisly string of coincidences, Incubus remains a staple of strange cinema that even manages to exceed the label of a cult classic film, both due to its obscurity and surreal qualities. Watching the film is the equivalent of both entering or leaving a dreamlike state, an odd feeling in which comfort meets discomfort, as there has never been a film quite like it, or a film released since, that shares the many factors that allowed it to be so elusive for so many years, and unusual even today. While I find myself refraining from recommending the film to the general audience, I do recommend it on the basis of its fascinating production story in terms of William Shatner's involvement, the incorporation of Esperanto, and the subsequent supposed curse that stems from it. If you are able to place yourself in the right kind of mindset for a cinematic oddity with a haunting atmosphere and deeply artistic components, give it a watch.